Hello, guys. Our guest on the show today is one person who doesn't just talk leadership, but lives the life of a leader. He's one who has shown capacity in his life endeavors, especially in his legal practice. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, join me welcome Barrister Sigalo Cliford, a man who has wowed the world of law with his profound grace, acumen, and tactical knowledge. Barrister Clifford Sigalo, it's nice welcoming us to come visit you at your very lovely office, lovely chambers, and then you're doing so well here. How are you doing today?
I'm great, but you flatter me.
Wow, oh, wow, thank you. I can't flatter you enough because I'm talking about my experience right now meeting with you in your place. This is a very lovely place and a decent one at that.
Thank you, Tori.
Our viewers may not know you exactly. Some would know you. But can those of them who don't know you get to meet you personally? Share something about you.
Okay, well, my name is Clifford Sigalo. Currently, I practice as a legal practitioner, which we call lawyer in this part of the country. I have a humble beginning. I was fortunate to born into a home where education was seen as a priority. My father, who was then just a Mr. Friday Barikbeman Sigalo, and my mother, Florence Sigalo. I was born into their home from Barako local government in Barako village in Gokana local government of Rivers State. And I had my early primary schools in different places. Some persons would not know.
Oh, wow.
I actually started primary school from my village. The reason being that my father at that time was still undergoing his education at the College of Science and Technology, which is now Rivers State University of Science and Technology. And he didn't have all it took to have me around. So I had to be in the village with my grandparents. And I did that for several years, where I started my primary school. I eventually had to move with them into town.
Oh.
And for the records, I also attended the community primary school Rumeme.
Oh, that's a girls' school.
Community primary school Rumeme.
Oh, okay, way inside
Yeah,
the girls.
yeah.
Okay.
That's the next place I went to, and I think I did primary 3, 4, and 5 in that school. And then eventually went to the Rivers State University of Science and Technology Staff School, where I completed my primary school. I did primary 6 there. And after that, I had a little stint at the Government Comprehensive Secondary School, Borokri.
Oh, wow.
I think I was there just for about 2 months. Shouldn't be more than that. And then I eventually got another admission at International Secondary School, Rivers State University of Science and Technology, where I moved over and I did my secondary education. I got admission into Rivers State University of Science and Technology to study law. I think I missed the first admission.
Okay.
And then it was the second year I got admission. We're all home owing to the ASU strike.
Okay, that's
for almost
true.
a year.
Yeah, that's true.
So even though our matric number bear DE 96, we actually started lectures in 1997. And then I graduated in 2001. And but that school year spilled too for the purposes of strike.
Right.
Into 2002, but formally we graduated 2001.
Okay.
And then went to law school in 2002. My law school was the Nigerian Law School, Barr, Abuja.
Oh, wow.
It was a fun time actually. We did the 1-year compulsory law school program, and I was called to the bar on the 1st of July 2003.
Lovely.
Since then, I've been in practice. I actually started some kind of understudying before I went for youth service here in Port Harcourt. And eventually went to the north, where I stayed for about 3-4 years, practicing in different firms. I had the privilege of being at the State House of Assembly for my primary assignment.
Wow.
But because I had so much love for litigation, I also decided at that time, with the permission of my director of legal at the House of Assembly, to also take a place for practical legal experience, a law firm. I went around town. This is a little bit of an exciting story.
Yeah.
The first firm I was directed to by some of my core members who seem to have had some experience around town was the office of Tayo Jegede SAN. Tayo Jegede, I think recently was a Guba candidate for the Ondo state elections, PDP candidate.
Late.
But he was solely a practitioner at that time in Adamawa State. So I went to his firm. He received me warmly. We talked about his experience with some of the big names in Port Harcourt. The late Granville Abibo, who also served in Yola.
Okay.
And my Lord, the Honorable Justice L.C. Thompson. They all served in the same firm, the firm of Aminu, Aminu in Yola then, one of the biggest firms around at that time. And that warmed me up with him, and he gave me a position in the office. But incidentally, I was also referred to another firm, which I also decided to check out. That's the office of Boss Mustafa, who incidentally is the Secretary to Government of the Federation. Now, I went to Boss Mustafa's office, and they also gave me an offer. But the offer had accommodation. Sorry, did not have accommodation attached to it, but monetized accommodation. Tayo Jegede had given me an accommodation, which he said I should wait a little bit to get fitted up. So, well, as a young man then, driven more by the need to have some stability in terms of economy, I decided to opt
for Boss Mustafa.
Yeah, for Boss Mustafa. Then Tayo wasn't a senior advocate yet, and referred my friend to Tayo Jegede's office so he could get the accommodation and we could use my money
to run things
and then live together, which we did. So I was with Boss Mustafa eventually. And then at the end of my service year, I moved over to IY Sambo and Co. He wasn't so much of a litigation person, but he knew the quiet nuances of the law, which for me was good at that time. I was quite busy, and then eventually I needed to go to Jos for a postgraduate program. That became my thought at that time. So I moved over to Jos, where I got admitted into the firm of Solomon Umor and Co. Solomon Umor is now a senior advocate. And I was there for some few months when I moved over to another firm. It was Idowu, Ode, and Abang at that time. I also had a few stints because Mr. Ode was just returning from politics. The firm was not in the best stability at that time, having just returned. So I moved over to another firm, Joe Amopiton and Co. Joe Amopiton was or is a professor at the University of Jos. And is now a senior advocate of Nigeria. So I came in as his head of chamber hoping to commence my postgraduate program.
There.
But it lingered. So I just made up my mind that I was done with the reasons for which I elected to go to the north. And that it was time to return home. So I returned back home and started searching for the firm that met my expectation. And I went around a couple of firms, some of which had accepted to take me in. But eventually I met a friend who referred me to a firm called Principles Law Partnership at that time.
Okay.
It was, I think, 32 or 42 Wogu Street, the line. I walked in and I loved the environment. I found out that it was a partnership. There were 4 partners at that time that made up the firm. I was called for an interview. I came for that interview with very many of us. That was the first time I was having that kind of a setting, to practice in a law firm. I've always been fortunate. I walk in, I introduce myself, I sell myself, and I'm taken in. But this was very competitive. Very, very cool. We had lawyers lined up for just one position. They weren't going to take more than one. But incidentally, I was the one that was taken. That was 2007. And I spent 13 years in that firm.
Wow.
I came in as an associate, rose to senior associate, and became an associate partner. At that point, I felt that there was a need to do more, in spite of the fact that it was a convenient and comfortable environment.
Okay.
So the idea of Sig and Silk Attoneys emerged.
Why that name, Sig and Silk? It comes with a swag. Why did you choose that?
Okay, I think I'll come to you so that I don't miss my trends.
Oh, okay.
But I'm going to come to that. One of the things I wanted to say remarkably was the fact that I came into Principles Law Partnership on the 1st of March 2007.
Okay.
And I left on the 29th of February 2020. So it was exactly 13 years.
Days.
And then we now started Sig and Silk. Now to your question, why Sig and Silk? I think it's just a happen chance.
Okay.
I'd always loved to have something that seemed to stand out in terms of name.
Okay.
So from my days in the university, I used to have a firm. When I buy books, I write the name of the firm on the books. Then it used to be Clifordian Chambers. That's what I used to just write, Clifordian Chambers. Ogiami and Ogiami, Clifordian Chambers. Ogiami is my great-grandfather's name. Oh. Yes, and it sounded Ghanaian somehow.
Yeah.
So I felt comfortable with it. But with time, I was no longer, I didn't find it well suited anymore. So as at the time I was about leaving, I had started thinking about what the name of my firm would be. I wrote several things. I tilted several things round. Eventually, I think in the course of discussion with my wife, some names started sounding out. My wife claims she
originated the name.
She gave the concept. That is still very much in dispute. But somehow we came about that name, Sig and Silk Attoneys, and for me it just sank. I didn't know that it would be easy for people to just remember.
Yeah, it for branding purpose, it sits very well. Very well.
Well, the Silk came as a result of the fact that I'd always thought that as a practitioner who had devoted much of time to legal practice in terms of litigation, that being a senior advocate was a fine dream. And so to perhaps put that in my consciousness, the word silk came about. It's another word for senior advocate or Queen's Counsel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, as used by the British.
Oh, wow. One thing I would not fail to do is join Madame in this case to give her credit. If you want peace at home and in business, you have to give Madame the credits due her. Now, quite interestingly, your journey is a very remarkable one. And it shows that you didn't settle for less. You carried your wisdom. Your wisdom showed in your decision making in terms of settling in the places you had served. Now, what I'm curious about is, what drives you? What's your philosophy of life?
Well, I wouldn't put one thing to my philosophy of life. I think a whole lot of things influence me.
Okay.
My growing up influenced me. I grew up as a local boy who played around the streets and had the feel of what raw life is like. I wasn't born into a golden spoon. I slept on mats, on mud floors growing up. So I had real experiences of life growing up. And it wasn't like that molded me in the beginning into the perfect child. I think I was also one of those children who parents found difficult to contain. I think I buy into your word. I was seen to be difficult in many ways. And that, as I grew, showed up in different ways. But God had just been my keeper. Because I also took several risks in the course of growing up, born out of those tendencies that put me to too many risks. But God at every point just had his own plans for me, which was bigger
than what you were displaying or
exhibiting. Because as early as primary 4, I came close shave to being expelled from
school.
I was expelled from my class. And I'm going to go back to this story, hopefully, if we get to it, to see how some of those things defined me. Then, when I got into primary 6, because I got into primary 6 and I took an entrance for the staff school, UST, and was waiting for
the results of
that this thing. And I had another brush again that actually now got another expelled from my class. And my teacher expelled me from the class and I was no longer entering the class. Same thing that happened in primary 4 happened.
Repeated itself.
Yeah, repeated itself. I was no longer going to class. My parents didn't know. And it was a classmate of mine that now had to reveal this to my parents, that I was no longer in class. Fortunately for me, I think about that same week, the results of my entrance into staff school came out.
Oh, wow.
And I got admission there.
Lovely.
For the primary 3, I had the fortune, primary 3-4, I had the fortune of writing exams with a teacher who supervised me and was very impressed with the way I carried myself in the course of writing my exams. And so I moved from the class that expelled me to her own class. And the teacher who expelled me started protesting. We had to go to the headmistress.
Wow.
And these are some of the trajectories that perhaps also made me understand that I had some kind of a gifting to be a lawyer. I was asked to make my case. And I made my case to the degree that I was being oppressed in that class. And they made a ruling there and then that I should join the teacher whose class I went to and that I should remain in that class. So when it happened in primary 6, I decided to also go to that teacher's class because she had also moved into primary 6.
Okay.
But she now rejected me this time. that I've had a previous experience. But like I said, God intervened for me. I had taken an exam to move out of the school without the knowledge of my parents' knowledge of what was happening, and fortunately for me, I passed and I went to staff school from there, and continued and was able to finish in staff school, not without a skate, because that's another story for another day.
Wow.
In staff school, at same primary 6, about terminal time, I also got a rustication notice.
Wow.
And we are taking my younger brother with some of my friends whom I don't want to mention here because they are not part of this interview. To the Eagle Island. The staff school is bounded by the Eagle Island to go swim. And so somebody reported that some group of students, and we're children, just about 10, 11, 12 years old, what did we know? We went there to swim across the river, and that information got in. And then they listed out the names of the persons who were involved. And I was one of them. They brought us out, spanked us. In fact, amazingly, one of the teachers we had, who incidentally was also a co-teacher with my father at the time my father was teaching at Ascension High School in LMA, and was now a teacher at the staff school.
Where you were?
Where was I? Where I was. You know, after we were all flogged, and I strolled out, she commended me the way I took my strokes.
Wow!
That's show you the kind of child I was. You know? So we got home, and I told my parents that they were asked to come appear at the principal's office. Sorry, the headmistress' office, Mrs. Cookie, because of that case. And my father appeared the next day. But I told them a very glowing story. That some boys after school had taken my younger brother, who was then in the nursery, across the fence to the island. I was told that. And I went there to
accost them.
What was, yes, to accost them. Only to find that they were playing with my brother in the water. And that's how I jumped in to rescue my brother. That was the story I told my parents.
Wow.
And so the fact that I was listed was not because I was involved, but because I went for a rescue mission.
Yeah.
So my father was furious. The next day he came to school and wanting to charge the system. By the time we got there, one of the teachers whose son was also involved in that incident. Well, we've all transformed now, so I can mention him. Afaya Briggs was also there with the mom.
Okay.
And it was in the course of my now telling that story that he now said, no, that what I'm saying is not true. That I joined everybody else.
Yeah, you were part of the arrangement.
I was part of the arrangement. And at that time, my younger brother was not called out among the names. So they had to go call my younger brother. Brought him. Mrs. Cookie sat him down and, talked to him generally, told him, well, you know Jesus. Jesus said you shouldn't lie.
Yeah.
And you should tell the truth and all that. What actually happened? Did they force you to the water, or you went there with your brother? And my younger brother now confessed that it
was a jolly good ride.
It was a jolly good ride for all of us. And then he had to take his own spank because he wasn't spanked today.
Oh, wow.
So, and when I told this story at home, because my mother had just given birth to our last child, and there were a lot of visitors, very prominent persons who even came to visit us. They all believed me. They all believed me. But amazingly, my father never said anything after that incident. He never said anything. He just quietly went home, and we've never talked about it. But I was back to school. Again, when I got to secondary school, but this now was for a good reason.
Okay.
Because by God's grace, when I became 13, I think I was in my GS2, I gave my life to Christ and refocused my life. But I had a passion more now to do the things of God. And the principal at that time wasn't comfortable with the way we were going around it.
Okay.
So I had gone out with some of my friends to preach to some of juniors students in another session. And then in my returning, I was caught. Because it was off break period. I was returning after the break period. So again, I got another rustication. And this time I was bold enough to bring my father, because it was for the gospel.
Exactly.
So I got back to school. But the amazing thing was that was like in SS2, which we call class 5.
Class 5, senior secondary school, yeah.
The following year, I was made the chapel prefect of the school.
Profound.
Yeah. And some of those things started changing the trajectories of my life. I was president of the Student Christian Movement in the secondary school. I was also the president of the press club and a squadron leader with the road safety club.
Wow.
So those positions are my testimonial.
Lovely.
But I think going forward, some of these things modeled me. They taught me the downs, the ups, the road. And, in the course of my work, I've also had good influences You know, I had good mentors. Some of them who also saw my weaknesses and took time to talk about it, to discuss it with me, you know, to see how they can shape me, make me better, you know, and all that. And I took time to also do an analysis of what I thought was the better life. You know, I stayed away from certain things that I felt could be disruptive to my career.
Drawing from your experiences, you know, and then using this to impact the lives of those who will be listening, and then for future generations, what are some of the lessons you learned based on your experiences growing up that today has also helped to shape you? Like maybe like an outline, you know, what are some of them?
Okay. Let me say first, and I'll relate with this. When I was in the university and stumbled into studying law, because I think primarily my auntie told me, then my eyes used to be very big, and that Ganifa me and Ledu Mite, who were the only people I also knew as lawyers, had big eyes. That was how she said it. I don't know how true that is. And that it would be nice for me to read law. So that motivated me. Now, in the course of my career, which has been the greatest influences, and my involvement with my faith being the greatest influences, I've found that diligence pays. The first thing in life is diligence. The second, which may be related to diligence, is focus, because diligence may relate more to doing things in ways that are, but then you need to have a narrow point where you're going to, where you're headed to, because that would help to reduce your distractions when you know exactly where. Hard work, which is more like diligence, but taking more than others would want to take, you know, had also helped me, because it helped me to, I'm not as fast as I think I should go, but within the framework of the opportunities that I have had, you know, it had helped me to speeding up certain things that ordinarily, you know,
would have taken a while.
Yeah, it would have taken a while to achieve. I can't take away integrity, because the truth is that at every point in time, what people have to say about you
matters so much.
It's so valuable to your growth in life.
Yeah.
What people have to say, a word about you in the negative could crumble your destiny.
Seriously, yes.
You know, and so when people have positive statements to make about you, because they can trust and rely on your word and conduct, it's very, very important. So I think integrity has been one of the core things that I look at, and I believe helps in the growth process, you know, for anybody. Then it's important you have mentors.
Be very key.
You know, mentors may not be the people you interact with all the time, because they may not be always available, but they have to be role models, people you're looking up to, and study them. Try to find out the secrets that make them what they are, you know, and imbibe those values that you feel are important, you know, to getting you to where you want to be, the way they have, you know. So mentors are important. The other thing that I also think very much important that has influenced me is learning. You must be open to learning. You don't be static. Seek new endeavors. Seek new knowledge. Read. As much as possible, be voracious. You can't know everything.
Yeah.
It's quite impossible. You can't also be an expert in all areas.
Very true.
But there's something. You can know something about everything that, when you're faced with certain challenges, can move you into expertise. Even in your learning, can move you into expertise in your learning. But if you don't know anything about something, it's difficult to imagine how that concept works.
Yeah.
So have a knowledge of everything, particularly in your field. Try as much as possible to be versatile. Be up to date. It is important that you grow with the way the profession grows. Because like the profession of law, what used to be prevalent and fashionable and relevant 10 years ago to drive growth process for any lawyer, some of them have become redundant. They become irrelevant or not completely the go-to.
Viable anymore.
You know, so you need to understand that there are changes that are occurring and drive towards those changes. Be part of that system. Be part of the discourse. So trainings are important. Reading is important. Networking is important. When you render services pro bono, you join voluntary groups to contribute to the development of organizations, associations, and even the general human well-being. You find out that people get to identify your bigger values in the course of doing those things. So these are a few. There may be more.
Yeah.
I mean, these ones always stick to my eye, and I try to...
Candidly, these represent a lot that would help to shape the values
Then finally, sorry,
Yeah.
I let me not break you in. I think teamwork, and I learned something about that. I'm sure maybe we'll discuss that. You're learning to work with a team, which is not far removed from volunteering.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Now, prior to this sit-out that we're having now, I had the opportunity, a real opportunity of looking through your profile, and I would confess that it was quite intimidating.
Again, you flatter me.
Yes. No, this time, I'm taking responsibility for my statements, saying that it is indeed intimidating. Let me take out a few. You know, for a very young, middle-aged man like you, you have held several leadership positions, which has given you lots of experiences. You have served in very prominent Lord Chambers across the nation. You are a member of the UK Arbitrary Council. You have been assigned or appointed as a notary public in Nigeria by the former Chief Judge Abi in 2016. The list is endless. The achievements you've had. What would you ascribe to be the real drive that pushes you to get all these things?
Okay, so before I
because there are lots of lawyers out there. It's not as if in one way or the other they're not doing things, but you stand out. What do you think is responsible?
Okay, so before I answer your questions, first, I think I have not done as much that I think is sufficient for me now to think that I've gone very far in the profession. First, I'm a member, just to put the record straight, I'm a member of the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators UK, Nigerian branch. There are still other heights. We have fellowship, which is the next stage.
Okay.
We hope by the grace of God we'll get there, but still a level that is yet to be attained. Now, for whatever I've been able to do as a lawyer or as a person, I've always believed that whatever you put your hands to, should do with all your might, all of your strength. I'd hoped that at my age that I should have achieved even more, you know, but you see, time and chance happens to us all, so
very true.
We take that for what it is. But I won't take away the fact that I've had the good fortune of practicing in firms that had set for me very good standards in terms of what practice should be. And I've opened my eyes to the realities of what legal practice should strive, to be like. That had happened as a result of providence, but I also found out that when I made up my mind that I wanted to practice law, I took that deep decision without knowing. When I was to be posted for NYC, I had two postings. One was for Delta State and one was for Adamawa State. Till today, my parents don't know I had a posting for Delta State because I dumped it. And I decided I was going to go to Adamawa State. The reason why I wanted to go to Adamawa State was because I felt I had lived in this part of
you needed to experience and
have fresh experiences. But more importantly, I wanted to go very far away to a place where I'll be able to hone my legal skills without anybody from the end where I belong to having the opportunity of knowing how I did it.
Oh, wow.
That remains one of the biggest reasons why I choose to go that far to the north. And as soon as I dropped my bag, what was important to me was finding offices, law offices, where that skill will be properly honed. And so I was fortunate to get into firms that gave me that opportunity. One of the things that did for me was that at every time I stepped to the door, my determination oozed out from my skin. Anybody who saw me coming into his office wanting to take a space for practice saw this young man was very determined to give himself to work. So when I was with Boss Mustafa, others would have closed, but I would be in the office working till almost 8, 9. And what was I doing many of the times? Just reading law reports. Because I wanted to understand how the law worked. I wanted to understand how the practice of the law was like. And I found out that the law report helped to reveal to me how these things were like, which was the reason for which I came to the north. And then what now happened was that in the course of my interaction with my seniors and my bosses in the office, they saw I could introduce novel ideas to certain discourse that was going on. So that confidence and trust naturally came on. And so that gave me the opportunity to do cases that perhaps at my age at the bar, I wouldn't have been opportune to do. So they gave me those liberties. And I started writing briefs, appellate briefs quite early. I was going for trials, and it was obvious that this was my forte, it was my comfort.
Talking about briefs, you have written several expert opinions on Nigerian law. And one of your opinions at a certain time had been adopted by the UK court in enforcement of a Nigerian matter. How does that? Don't you feel proud of yourself?
Well,
it's a standout achievement.
There's nothing to be proud about because all glory goes to God.
Oh yes,
at the end of the day, I think whatever confidences we have still goes to the fact that God had given us the opportunity to do what we do. But I've always sought to challenge myself, and I had those rare opportunities owing to that fact that I had sought to challenge myself. Let me say this, it's on the record. I left the university not with a very proud grade because my interest was more in political activities in the university than in the real academic work. But I knew I was better than that. I knew I was really better than that. But so I told myself at a point that if I was going to do anything different, then it means that I needed to work real hard. So one of the first experiences I had was, I think sometime in 2009, shortly after I joined Principles Law Partnership. We had a brief from one of the multinationals. Were sued. The multinational was sued at the ECOWAS court. And the cause of action bordered on international law. And at that time, we had not had such a brief in the firm. And the ball fell to me
you
to give an advisory opinion on what we needed to do. And I think some of these things also came, like I said, because I was always willing to put the
take on,
And I wrote my opinion, submitted it to my partners, and they were very pleased with what I did, but they needed confirmation. So shortly after I wrote my opinion, one of the senior advocates of Nigeria, who is also a Queen's Counsel, had now sent his own brief because he was representing one other multinational. In fact, all the IOCs in Nigeria were sued in that suit.
Okay.
So they retained different senior advocates, and my firm was also one of it. And when the senior advocate's brief came in, and they read the brief of the senior advocate, and they went back to read what I had done, my partners became convinced
that you were the man.
That I had done. In fact, one of them said, and I say this in all humility, that we had nothing to add to what had been done. You know, so those were some of the things that built my confidences that I could do work outside the norm. And these were issues that bordered on international law. I never studied international law. But that's why I said that you wouldn't know everything, but your ability to read into a bit of everything can build you into being an expert when the need arises on the issue, because you can research more, make more findings. So that came. And then I now discovered that at any time we had international briefs, because we had advisory retainers. We had retainers with almost all the IOCs. And sometimes when they needed local advice on some international matters that were ongoing, they would brief us. And at every point that happened, it was always brought to my table. And so I worked on quite a very sensitive matters that bordered on cross-border transactions. In fact, one of them was, at that time, I think about 2011, 12, 13, was the biggest damage that had been awarded, costs of damage that have been awarded in the entire world.
Wow.
Because of the sensitive nature of those cases, I don't want to
mention them.
But at that time, against one of the multinationals, in one of the countries in the Southern America. And the lawyers who were involved, some of them came from the United States, they were involved, and were giving advisory opinion on a whole lot of things. I was handling all of that. So on enforcement of foreign judgments in Nigeria and several other issues that were coming up, the files became bulky and several. And I was right on it, delivering my opinions to the lawyers who were also retained by the corporation in some other countries, Britain and the US. And also we worked on that. Then I also had the opportunity, which is what you had referred to here, one of the in fact, right now, it is still the biggest award of damage in Nigeria.
Oh, wow.
And that judgment was sought to be enforced in the UK. And the court needed expert opinion
on that
from Nigerian lawyers. And my firm again was retained to do that, and it dropped on my table. And I wrote my opinion. Now, the amazing thing about that case was that the judgment was enforceable in Nigeria, but then the question was, why could it not be enforced in the UK? And for me to be able to give that opinion, I needed to understand what the position of the law was
in the
UK, and then marry it with what the proceedings was like here that made it unenforceable in the UK. So I wrote my opinion and submitted, it was forwarded, and the UK court adopted the opinion and refused the enforcement of that judgment in the UK. But the judgment was eventually enforced here in Nigeria.
Wow, to your credit.
Yeah, it was enforced here, but they refused enforcement in the UK for the opinion we offered.
Wow. Thank you very much, Barrister Cliford Sigalo. We'll go for a very short commercial break, and when we come back, we'll continue this discourse.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Are you looking for a classic lodge while you're on the move? or a place to stay when you're far from home, or perhaps you're coming into town and you're looking for hospitable, safe and homely accommodation, one with exciting deluxe scenery, then look no further. Treasure Court Apartments gives you a blend of comfort, luxury and class in a warm, welcoming and safe environment. It is a well-furnished apartment with world-class finishing, featured with everything that makes a home warm, friendly, cozy and leaving you with beautiful memories and moments. Treasure Apartment comes with an outdoor swimming pool, a beautiful ambience, an armed security guard, 24/7 power supply, internet access, snooker, table tennis and so on, located at Sam Wobo Street off Sunny Abacha Road behind House on the Rock Church in GRA Port Harcourt. For more information, visit our website at www.odibolaproperties.com. For bookings and reservations, call Gloria at 0913 8888892 or visit us at Odibola House at Inyeweli in Sirim Layout, Tombia Extension, GRA Phase 3 in Port Harcourt, Rivers State. Treasure Courts Apartment, home at last.
Hello guys, welcome back to this interesting, wonderful interview session with Barrister Cliford Sigalo. He is one man whose CV intimidates even those who feel they know. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back once again. Barrister Cliford, from our discussions and your achievements, one would think that life had all been rosy. Now, tell us some of the challenges that you faced and you were able to surmount to become or get to where you are now.
Okay, thank you very much. I think before we commenced this interview, I just shared you a post from my friend.
Oh, yes.
Mr. Fatogun, SAN, who said at the time he was being called to the bar, he had made up his mind he wasn't going to practice law because he found out that, in his own words, that he couldn't find his place in the profession, because there are no big weights behind him in terms of parenting and all that. Well, I don't know what the reality of his case is, but I think mine was worse because I've never had anybody who practiced as a lawyer, that was in any way connected with me biologically. I also never had one that I had opportunity of growing up with, either by reference or in any way howsoever. So my being at the Faculty of Law was the first time I was seeing lawyers and experiencing lawyers, in terms of lecturers being lawyers. And then upon graduation and then called to bar, I was for the first time getting to work with people I can see flesh and blood as lawyers. So I had no such background, in any way howsoever. And like I have related in my earlier answer to your question, background wasn't anything rosy, We had the roughest of life growing up. I also didn't start my education in any of the prominent places you can refer to. We did write with the chalk and the little board, which we carried in hand to go to school.
That's the slates.
The slates, thank you. So that's how I started. I started education with the slates. I didn't do a nursery school. Yes, I started school about 4, but that 4, because there was no nursery, we put into primary. But I was also made to wait until
you got ready.
I became ready because I had to just go into school, So, and we sat on the floor to learn. That tells you how it was like.
Growing up.
Even when I moved into the city, it wasn't anything. It wasn't a prime school in any. We also sat on the floor. We had holes on the floor. The teachers wrote on the board that was the stone wall.
I remember that.
They just paint the wall black with charcoal and write on the stone wall. And you had your 2A, 2B exercise book, when you eventually moved from the chalk to this thing. So life was like that. But I see the truth is, those may not have been the best experiences of life, but they prepared us for life. You know, because the fact that we're able to rugged that process, at this point, I believe, had placed one in such a position where the natural difficulties of life are never seen as constraints. You know, you now learn to use them as springboards, you know, for what you have in mind to achieve. Now, I think, having seen to a degree what the world is like, the expectations of the world, you know, what now had become important is the desire to use those hard experiences to brace the chances that are opened to you as you grow, because there are many heights to climb.
Yeah.
There are many opportunities that are still in existence. The world will never run out of opportunities.
That's true.
People will still be first, in spite of the fact that the world has existed as long as it has been.
Yeah.
There are still people who are first for some things.
Would always be leaders at every point.
At every point. In fact, today I was just reading that an 18-year-old fresh college graduate or student is now the youngest mayor to have been elected in the United States of America. So there are still opportunities for first.
Yeah.
So the whole thing is, for me, using the rough patch experiences of life, seeing that those can be
polished.
Yes, good stones with which one can
excel.
So it's never really been rosy. Had it rough in terms of economy, had it rough. I recall, you know, my father is a lecturer, but in the course of all of those ASU strikes they used to have those days when Jega, you know, was the leader of
the ASU.
And for nearly 2 years, the universities were closed, salaries were not being paid. You know, the reality also dawned again, and we're back to the hustling to see how family will put itself together and grow. So there have been rough experiences, but that had never deterred anybody, you know, from seeking better opportunities and better life. Because the truth is that there are always opportunities.
That's true.
Yes,
that's true.
There are always
now, you served most of your early career life in the North. That is where you honed your skills. As someone who had moved from Rivers State, the Niger Delta, to the North, what came to you as a cultural shock, you know, that you were not prepared for?
Okay, well, you see, here life is a little bit more open. We're more interactive. We're more. There's so much of liberty in terms of our expression.
Yeah.
The North has religion in a way that tend to limit people's expression.
Yeah.
You know, but then they are still humans, and perhaps still express themselves the way they still want to express themselves the way we choose to express. But culturally, Nigeria is not too different from each other. But for me, I think the experience I had was that coming to find out that the North was not necessarily Hausa Fulani. That there were several tribes, the Chamba people, the Bachamans. You know, in Adamawa State where I was, there were over 50, if not 100 tribes.
Really?
That existed in Adamawa State alone. Different people, you know, the Marigis. They had their own cultures and their own ways of doing things. And their own resistance to even some cultural elevation to their space. You know?
Yeah.
So if you're on this side of the divide where we are, you would just ordinarily think, oh, the North, Hausa Fulani, everybody's a Muslim. But it's really not that. You have a good bulk of, in fact, there are certain states in the North where you have predominantly Christians. You know, arguably so. Go to Taraba, it's down northeast.
Yeah, that's true.
Have that.
That's true.
So you find at the end of the day that these things exist, and they are the realities of our society that we don't get to know about because
we're on this other side.
We're on this side and we're not interacting enough. to understand that it's really not so. They have their own cultures which may not be exactly different from us, but I think the most thing that shocked me was that they had more than Hausa Fulani in the arrangement.
Just yesterday, you were chosen amongst thousands of other established lawyers to moderate the late Justice Alagua's second year memorial lecture, or colloquium as you will call it. And then to be someone to do that, late Justice Alagua is not an ordinary man. He's someone who had engraved his footprint, not only in the legal practice, but also in society. You know, how did you feel being given that responsibility?
Well, first, I wasn't the speaker.
I said moderator.
Yeah, I understand.
Okay.
So, my role, as important as it was to define organization of the program, was not as important as that of the speaker.
Oh, okay.
So, but then, it's difficult to have a program run smoothly if you don't have a good moderator, a good MC, a
Exactly.
good comparer. I came into comparing, just out of happenstance. When I was in the university, we used to have this group we call the House of Lords, and all we try to do among ourselves is to see how we can make punctuations like that fall within the realms of Shakespeare's poetic expressions. The likes of Lord Denning, who we saw as the leading lights in the law, and made very profound expressions. And I told you I was president of the press club, so somehow also given to some writing and all that. We lost two colleagues of ours while we were in our final year. And before that, I think I was the head of the moot court. We have what we call moot court in the university. I was head of the moot.
Okay.
And so we got into organizing moot court sessions that allow people to express themselves as lawyers. And also give things to expression. Then I know that we invited the Honorable Justice Pat Acholonu, who was Justice of the Court of Appeal, Port Harcourt here division at that time. I think he eventually became a Justice of the Supreme Court, to give a lecture. And the students at that time had elected that I would moderate that program, compare that program. It was attended by the university community and a lot of people from outside. It was a huge occasion we had at that time. So I compared that event. And that was my first opportunity to compare, at the university at that time. Then I said we lost two of our colleagues and someone needed to do the oration for the students, what we call the Lausanne students.
Yeah, the union.
I was absent in those meetings where they nominated me to make the orations at those funerals, because they were held at the Convocation Arena in the university, also well attended. So those were opportunities that show I could do a few things in those realms, but for many years too, those were kept latent. Then I think we had, there was a conference that was being organized by the Nigerian Bar Association, Port Harcourt here, to be attended by the national president, the governor of Rivers State at that time, the governor of Rivers State, and several, those gatherings were actually going to be very big gatherings. And my principal in chamber, Mrs. Miana ACNSN, nudged that I would compare the event. And I was like, not seeing me do this kind of thing before, you're throwing me into this kind of
situation.
Situation. She said I would do it. So I did that event. I compared that event. And I recall that the late Granville Abibo, who I worked closely with on some things from our participation at the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators Port Harcourt chapter, at that time had a plan to celebrate his 60th birthday. And he told me and my very good learned senior friend, Toye Kukubo, who is now a senior advocate, that I and Toye were going to compare his events, that he saw what we did, and that he wanted, so that proved that something was done right.
Yeah.
You know, at that time, I eventually now had to do several other such events, you know, and I think just 2 weeks ago before this, I also compared at the Chartered Institute of Arbitrators UK branch national conference, the Gala Night. It was also an opportunity, and I was called upon to do this. I just did my little bit. It's not in any.
And that little bit
actually didn't need that. It should be taken from 1,000 of lawyers.
It's because there is competence, and you have proven this in other fora that they have witnessed, and so it is for them to trust you, because being a compare for an event, you must be trusted to say, oh, this man can deliver. And it is that trust that made them choose you. But staying on this, and then I also want to find out or ask you, late Justice Alagwa, yes, did remarkable in the legal profession. But there's someone from Rivers State too, who happened to be one of the first Attorney Generals that Rivers State had produced for the Federation. And aside the very recent recognition of the Executive Governor of Rivers State, naming the new law school built here after him, nothing seems to be happening from the legal profession. Do you have any answers or reasons why it's like this?
Well, for me, like you said, NABO remains the biggest image that have come from this part of the country. First Attorney General of the Federation, first Senior Advocate of Nigeria in the country. Because the late Frederick Rotimi Alade Williams is many times published as the first senior advocate, but they were all made senior advocates the same day, you know. And his feat has not been repeated. These are men that walked this earth in great strides. And like you said, I feel more needs to be done to continually celebrate him. The same way these annual lectures were put out for the late His Majesty King Alagwa.
Yeah.
We need to have certain forums that allow serious discourse on national, local, community issues, you know, using him as a springboard, as a focal point, you know, for such discourse. So much needs to be done. I've not really seen that, considering the quality of that, what that man was, you know, not just to Rivers State, but the entire country. So the NBA, which now has several branches, is not proliferated in a sense. It's just that it has several branches. But these branches need to also learn that they can activate the processes that help to develop the society through discourse using these elements. Their names should not be forgotten.
Exactly.
Their name needs to be kept, preserved, you know, and re-echoed, you know, from time to time, you know, with programs just like you have mentioned.
Yeah.
So I expect that more should be done.
Well, let us believe and hope that if the legal luminaries don't wake up to their responsibilities, we from the media will try to do something to bring them in and let us celebrate these great icons. You know, staying with me, brother. We've been talking about your successes, but you see, just like in the social parlance, they'll say behind every successful man is a woman. Now, behind every successful venture is a team. And so I'm curious to know, how do you identify talents you work with? How do you keep them motivated? And how do you align them how do you get them to align with your vision and continue to drive, what you stand for?
I would answer your questions this way. I was just reading something not too long ago, maybe yesterday or something, and in the middle of the night. And one of the issues that was raised in that discourse is the difficulty in the present time in retaining workforce. Because there seem to be softer ways of making money. Somebody can do some hours on TikTok, repeatedly, and he gets followers.
Yeah.
There seem to be the belief, I don't know how it works, that you can make more money over time than sitting 8 hours, trying to
be
work
productive.
So finding people who have dexterity to work had become very complex and difficult.
Yeah.
The second other challenge is that establishment like ours run with the economy.
Yes.
So where you don't have a very buoyant, vibrant economy that enables a stream of income that enables you to pay as much as would keep people easily behind the wheels of work, can also be very challenging.
Yeah.
So, but then I had the privilege of listening to, he's a local boy, a good, very enterprising local boy who I call my friend, Tekena Roberts. I was listening to a program he was on, and he was talking about the need to stay ahead as an entrepreneur. I caught a lot from that discourse, and it's some of the things I have looked at. First, you need to learn to build team.
Yeah.
Building team requires the fact that they need to see that you're involved in what they are involved with. You're interested in their well-being. You're interested in their know-how. You're a motivator. You need to let them see that there are opportunities in what they are doing that is bigger than what they are even currently doing. So it's the best way to keep people, in. However, even in the course of doing all of that, there's also the need to keep the grit, to keep focus on what needs to be achieved, and how people need to have the right kind of mindset for what needs to be achieved. So trying to balance all this, it can be very complexing for a leader many of the time, as a head of an organization.
Yeah.
So for me, what I try to do is, within the framework of what the economy is, work out a system that enables people to be better motivated than what they probably would get on the same scale elsewhere. That's one. Two, be involved with them.
Okay.
Know your concern about them. Show empathy as much as possible. Look at the faces of your staff. Are they happy? If they're not happy, you need to find a way to make them happy. Many times it's not just about the resources, because the resources is limited to what is in.
Actually, yeah.
But you can create a fellowship that make them understand that as you grow,
they will grow
it's an
also.
open opportunity for them to also grow. So that way, people are a little bit more relaxed, knowing that if they work the firm to grow, they are also beneficiaries of that
themselves.
process. But it's not an easy road,
Of course.
because through the trajectory of growth, many persons won't be able to take the pains of not having all at that time. But you keep doing your bits. I've had this idea that for any organization, there appear to be 3 phases. The first phase is where you're driving the vision of the organization to a point where the organization can find level of stability.
Yeah.
At that stage, you may not be able to keep people for a very long time, because as soon as they find something that is relatively more lucrative, they would move. But you need to understand that you're in that stage. But you don't need to stay in that stage. You need to work very hard to move out of that stage. you now get to the stage where you can find, you choose the people you want. And then you create the environment that enables them
to thrive.
You know, they can be they can grow in that stage, you know, and all that. Maybe for a little bit longer time. And then they can find something else and also move on. Then you have a few who remain behind because they believe in the vision of what you're doing. Then you get to the last stage where you can say, I want you here.
Exactly.
And then the person would say, this is what it would take to keep me here. And then you sit on the table and you agree
on it.
You can look at certain persons and you say, okay, we have a plan for you in the system. This is the long-term plan that you have, because the system had grown to such a point where it's bigger than the dreams of some of the persons who are coming in.
Exactly.
So being in that system is the realization of their dream. So they have nowhere to go, relatively, in that system, until they also find that there are bigger fishes elsewhere.
You ventured into law without a background knowledge of the legal practice. But human beings, mentorship is the key to success for human beings. Who would you say has inspired you or shaped your life to who you are today?
I think for me, this is one of the most profound questions in this interview, amongst many. When I got into the university, the only person I used to see as a lawyer, and I knew, focused on as a lawyer, was the late Gani Fawemi. So my idea of what law practice was going to be was pure activism. I saw it like a picture. I think like through my years in the university, I had that mental picture in my mind, which is part of the reasons I got into student unionism. And felt that, okay, when we come out, we're going to drive human rights work. You know, and that's what makes you a lawyer. That what makes you a great lawyer. You know, that's the kind of idea I had. You know, but when I finished from the university and I started practice, I now observed that there were lawyers who were really not known, never seen. The public outside the legal community don't even know they exist. But they are primarily some of the most successful lawyers that you can find. You don't hear about them. They don't talk. They are never on the pages of the newspaper. But they are some of the most successful lawyers
you can find.
You can find. So that was a shocker for me. I got to find that, look, this law can serve same purpose in different ways. And this person still impact the society in very significant ways. So it tilted my thoughts. And I now started thinking, how do I balance this information that I now have? To be frank, I don't think that spirit of activism in the way I saw it, I think that is not the real me now, the me now. You know. And that does not stop the fact that I am adverse to actions or acts of people, government and establishment that tend to
not fall in line with the expected norm.
Yes, expected norm. And sometimes I've had to challenge some of those actions. But I related with some of these persons, like I called out some of my mentors. Fatai Arimo Osho was a place, his office was SAN, was the first place I had my pupillage, you know, internship from the law school.
Okay.
And then my interaction with Tayo Jege, the boss Mustafa Fen, Solomon Umar, and some of the other persons, I now got also to know in the course of my career and my working relationships with other interfirms.
Yeah.
You know, I saw that there was a whole lot to legal practice. It's not necessarily about the noise.
Activity,
Yes, and that is why somehow when I started Sig and Sek Attoneys, we never had a signboard outside. Because I discovered that you could build very vibrant practice without even your clients getting to see where you are.
Wow.
What was important was that you delivered on their services. And that you had a name out there on the professional front. So the professional front is not the size of your signboard outside the office. The professional front is your contribution to legal development, which comes through your legal writing, which comes through your deliveries to your client, which comes through your involvement in legal organizations and legal establishments and legal associations, professional bodies. You know, these are the ways people get to see you. These are the ways people get to rate you. These are the ways people get to associate or want to associate with you, and also want to relate with you in terms of professional dealings. So you could build a career where you become the reference point. I mean, among your colleagues, they have difficulties on certain issues. You are the go-to person. Is you. Among institutions and establishments, the referral is you. It's you they are talking about. This guy. This is the person. This is the go-to person. And yet you're just quiet at the background, and you're doing what you're doing. Everything is about your flair. It's about your push,
core area of focus, and all that.
Core area of focus, your drive, your vision, the way you see things, perspective, exposure.
As a thought leader, established one now, you talked about the economy affecting businesses and even yours. We as a nation, we're in another electioneering season where we intend to vote in our leaders who we expect to lead us better than we're experiencing now. Amongst the various political parties, my interest is not where you belong or where you have a flair for. But what advice would you give to Nigerians regarding how we vote and the choices we make for 2023?
Very, very profound question again. Because the truth is, we're part of the human race.
Yeah.
And so for that reason, like it's been said, we're all political animals. And you can't divert yourself from the realities of your environment.
Very true.
It also impacts on you directly. But your concern too should be for the welfare of your children and children's children. You know, that is why I believe that in countries where the social security system is in place, is that thinking of the children and the children's children. Because you may have been fortunate to have certain intellect and perhaps environment that enabled you grow a good economy. But your children
may not have that.
They may not have the acumen. We've seen situations where very brilliant men, have children who are not able to sustain that
what they have.
So, but then there should be something that ensures that everybody is taken care of, minimally. So we can't continue the trajectory that we're having in this country at this time. And I think somehow God has seemingly given us an opportunity, because He's not going to take decision for us at the end of the day.
Of course.
By seemingly opening a door to us. 1973, I believe, was the last time. 73, maybe 83 was the last time we had opportunity of having 3 strong candidates contesting for any elections in this country. It's always been 2.
Yeah.
And 2 out of which we were to pick nothing.
Exactly.
So, for the first time, we're having from the blues an opportunity to look at 3 leaders. I mean, at least from the statistics that we have, even the candidates themselves have recognized the strengths and the abilities of each of them.
That's true.
So my opinion, my advice to every Nigerian is this: in casting your vote for this election, just think about your child. Think about your child's child. To the 4th generation, think about them. Forget about yourself. Now, the reason why you need to forget about yourself is that by virtue of certain happenstance, you may be connected to the forces, the immediate
The forces, yeah.
And so your benefits may be available to you if the person you are looking at succeeds. But will that guarantee the welfare
of your children,
of your child and your children's children? Because there's no amount of money you're going to stockpile for yourself that is going to sustain your generation thereafter.
Exactly.
If they've not built the capacity to sustain that wealth.
Exactly.
And there is no guarantee that they are going to build such capacity. And there's also no guarantee that it won't plumel to nothing.
Exactly.
So if we have this kind of a thought system, taking a decision as to who should rule this country in 2023 going forward wouldn't be a difficult question. It wouldn't be a difficult question. Once you think outside yourself and just think of those children, just have them at the back of your mind when you're casting your vote. And I think we have a choice.
Dearly beloved Nigerians, you have heard it from Barrister Cliford Sigalo. When we go out there in 2023 to cast our votes, take not yourself as the primary reason, but think about the future of your children and the children yet unborn, that they may have a future that you will be proud that you gave that to them. Barrister Cliford Sigalo, thank you for having us today. It's indeed a wonderful one. I want to formally make a request that whenever we knock on your doors will be open and available to us.
My doors are always open for you. I must say, I'm sorry not to close out on you, but the moment I heard about Prodigy Press, and I think I started following you on Facebook.
Oh, wow.
Without you knowing.
Oh,
that,
wow.
I never even thought that I was also going to be having an opportunity to have an interview with you. But when I see excellence, I know it. And when it comes from people that I had a cause to grow with, it excites me exceedingly. And I'll just say, keep up what you're doing.
Thank you.
The heights are enormous. We talked in the course of our discussion about Port Harcourt. What seemed like the limitation of Port Harcourt. And still yet the overwhelming potentials of Port Harcourt. Because Port Harcourt is uniquely Port Harcourt. There's no two Port Harcourt in the whole of Nigeria.
I wouldn't take it away from you, but that's something you're going to do specially for us.
Yeah. So what you're doing is Lagos based, but you brought it in here. And I'm happy that you have what it takes to drive it. Just keep at it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's been indeed a lovely one.
Thank you for
God
the
bless
opportunity
you.
to
God
talk
bless
to you. It's lovely.
I appreciate it. Thank you.